Hare Krishna.
Hare Kṛṣṇa, dear devotees. So based on the request of other devotees, we are starting the study of Srimad Bhagavatam again. Krishna. So we received the request. We completed Srimad Bhagavatam earlier this year, but based on the request I have received, we will be starting Srimad Bhagavatam study again. So today I will be covering the introduction of Srimad Bhagavatam. Please join us for Jai Radha Madhav prayers. Hare Krishna. Please join us for Mangalacharan prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirye Shrotam Svakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Hridayantasto He Bhadrani Vidunoti Suhasatam Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatir Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhakti Nashtiki. Hare Krishna. So today as we are starting Srimad Bhagavatam, we'll be covering mainly the preface and the introduction. And in introduction, Srila Prabhupada, he gave translation and put stress on the very first verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, first verse. And then he also gave the summary of the lifetime of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who, he states, lived the life of Srimad Bhagavatam, and he propagated Srimad Bhagavatam. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called Srimad Bhagavatam as Amal Purana. So as part of the class today, we will quickly cover the very first verse and then we will dive into the subject matters. So Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first chapter, first verse. Please join us in the recitation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadiyasya Yato Anvayad Itraschateshu Abhigyah Swarat Tene Brahma Hridayadi Kavaye Muhyanti Yad Suryaha Tejo Vari Mridam Yatha Vinimayo Trisargo Amrisha Dhamna Svena Sada Nirastah Kukam Satyam Param Dhimahi. Hare Krishna. Janmadiyasya Yatho Anvayad. So here Srila Prabhupada is elaborating in the introduction itself that Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the cause of all creation, maintenance and destruction of the material universes. And further it has been elaborated. So let's do the Mangalachan prayers and then we'll dive into the individual aspects, the lessons from the preface and introduction. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Om Ajnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakhaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukham karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripa tadaham vande Shri Gurum Deenatarinam. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. So, directly diving into the preface in Srimad Bhagavatam. Again, for those who are interested, we will be covering a chapter in each class, studying the chapter in each class. And today we will be covering Srimad Bhagavatam, preface and introduction. So there are 5 lessons we get in the preface. Srila Prabhupada in Srimad Bhagavatam is starting his preface with one important aspect. He is saying, we must know the present need of human society. And what is that need? So he is identifying that there is a void in current human society, that there is a need of human society. When only this need is fulfilled, then the human society can be a happy society. Everyone in the human society would feel happiness and bliss. And once Srila Prabhupada was asked that, this place, material world, is characterized by these two characteristics. What are the two? First is it's temporary in nature, and then it is a place of misery. Dukkhalayam ashashvatam. Dukkhalayam is, it's a place of misery. Ashashvatam, it is temporary in nature. So everything that we experience in our life is temporary in nature. Yet it looks very upsetting to us because we are eternal by our very nature. Living entities are eternal in nature. So what is that need? So Srila Prabhupada elaborates in the preface that ideology of spiritual communism, of oneness of the human society, that ideology, that ideal society needs to be established where the whole human society feels as a single unit. And that single unit means that the whole human society needs to have the common goal. And Srila Prabhupada elaborates that in this current times, and this is in 1970s, but again it has been constantly progressing materially. The society has been progressing materially and spiritually by the grace of Srila Prabhupada, by his mercy, that he has written so many wonderful books for us to study. And the spiritual revolution has really taken up the whole society. It has caused transformation in the lives ever since the appearance of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is none other than Radha Kṛṣṇa in one. So, Antah Kṛṣṇa, Bahar Radha. So, it is Lord Krishna who is appearing in the mood of Radharani to propagate the Sankirtan movement of this age, to bless us, to deliver the fallen conditioned souls. And this ideal society has been envisioned by the great leaders, starting from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and then various acharyas, Srila Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Narottam Das Thakur, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada, and so many more. So in disciplic succession, the knowledge has been passed on. Srimad Bhagavatam is that Amal Puran. And so in the preface, Srila Prabhupada is identifying that this need will be fulfilled. How can this need be met? So that's the second lesson. First is to understand that there is a need, that there is an upheaval in the human society because of the demonic nature of materialists who are creating a lot of anxiety, a lot of pain, a lot of disturbance. So when Srila Prabhupada was asked that how many people need to become devotee so that this planet Earth will become Vaikuntha, a place where there is no misery, no kuntha. So Srila Prabhupada said only 2% of the population needs to become Krishna conscious. 98% can continue to do all nonsense that they are doing, but if 2% of the population becomes Krishna conscious, then this planet Earth would become Vaikuntha. There will not be a trace of misery. And on another occasion, one devotee asked Srila Prabhupada, why did Krishna create this material world, a place of misery and temporary nature? Srila Prabhupada gave a very enlightening response, saying that it is not Krishna, it is us. He's saying it is we humans who have created this material world to be a place of misery because of the selfish nature, to enjoy, to lord over this material world. So everybody wants to become God, right? To become the controller. And it is very interesting that people, instead of, sometimes they understand that we should be very submissive in nature, we should be very cooperative with each other, yet there is a tendency, because of the delusion that we are under, we have this tendency to judge others. And we understand that being mental itself is a bad thing, because mental people are generally called lunatics, from lunar, right? That's where it comes from. moon affects mind, and so there is a tendency of people to become judgmental. So we should not become judgmental. Rather, we should understand that everyone is very dear to Lord Shri Krishna, and we should try to avoid all kind of offenses, even janaprad. So Srila Prabhupada is identifying that how this need can be met, and he says that Srimad Bhagavatam will fulfill this need. Because for whole society to become unanimous and happy, there has to be an essential direction that we should receive, and Srimad Bhagavatam provides that direction. Kṛṣṇe svadham upadyate dharma jnana dhibhi saha kala nashtam drishamesha puranarko adhunodita. So Lord Krishna, when he departed for his spiritual abode, along with dharma jnana adibhi, so all the great qualities went along with Lord Shri Krishna. The religion personified left, jnana, knowledge left, and many other great qualities, they vanished from this material universe, from this material world. And so, at that time, Srila Vyasadeva, he wrote Bhagavad Purana, and this Bhagavad Purana is like a brilliant sun. From the sunshine of Srimad Bhagavatam as a sun, all our darkness because of the ignorance will be driven away. So that is a blessing we get in Srimad Bhagavatam. And why? So why is this need there? So it begins with an aphorism of the Vedanta philosophy. So Srimad Bhagavatam is the commentary on the Vedanta philosophy, Vedanta Sutra, by the original writer himself, Srila Kṛṣṇa Dvaipanya Vyasadeva. And he also starts with the prayer, this Bhagavatam, Janmadiyasya yatho anvad. Janmadiyasya yatho anvayad itraschateshva bhigya swarat. So he is from the beginning identifying, and of course the invocation mantra we know, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So Om is the Pranav Shabd, and in Bhagavad Gita Lord Krishna says that he is, the Om represents him. So again he expands further into Brahman, and Brahman has this Om sound, which is the cause of the creation of the material universes. It is not the cause of the creation of the spiritual universes, because spiritual universes are ever existing. And Lord Krishna is the supreme cause. Sarva Karan Karanam. So human society at the present moment, it's in the darkness of oblivion, as Srila Prabhupada is elaborating, that in this material world, at the present moment, there is darkness everywhere, and this darkness is of ignorance. Ignorance of what? Ignorance of the spiritual reality. Ignorance of our true nature. Ignorance of us not realizing who we truly are. Jivera Surupoya Kṛṣṇena Nityadas. In this material world, ever since we took birth, one thing we understand is that, okay, I have this body, and people have this tendency to use upadhis, right? So from birth itself, we experience various upadhis being posted on each person. So everyone has been told, he's a man, he's a woman, he's a child, he's an old man, he's a dad, he's a mother, this is a son, this is a brother, sister. All these are upadhis. He's an American, Indian, European, black, white, brown, yellow. All these are upadhis. There are different kind of upadhis pertaining to the body. It doesn't pertain to the spirit soul. While body is a category, so the material body is the material universe, the 5 gross elements, the 24 elements within the material universe. When we look from that perspective, starting with the 3 modes of material nature, from Pradhan, and come all these Mahat Tattva, and then Pradhan, Mahat Tattva comes, and the 3 modes of material nature, and then further expansion happens. All these are categories, while the reason behind the movement and the activities in this material universe is the living entity. And Ishvara. Ishvara sarva bhutanam hridayeshe arjun tishti. So Lord Krishna expands in his many forms, and one of his forms is as of Paramatma. So it is very interesting. Sometimes people say, okay, so Paramatma is Krishna. No, actually Krishna expands as Paramatma, but Paramatma is only has one characteristic. Lord Krishna is Satchidananda Vigraha. So he is all the three characteristics. Sat is eternal, Chit is full of knowledge, and Anand is filled with transcendental bliss, happiness. While in Paramatma feature, we see Sat and Chit, only two, eternal and full of knowledge. And in Brahman, we only see Sat feature, which is eternal. So it emanates, it's omnipresent. So that aspect is important. So Srila Prabhupada talks about in Prabhupada that yes, materially the world is advancing and everything seems to be progressing very nicely. We have better facilities. The countries, the boundaries that used to exist in the medieval age, the kind of uncomfortable and difficult situations that were there, not enough vehicles, not enough technology, not ability to do so many things in our life, that has gone away. So if you look at it from that perspective, yes, materially the world is advancing. Today if we pick up a pencil or a pen, we will be amazed that the lead is coming from one country, the wood is coming from one country, the rubber is coming from another country, the seal is coming from another country. Once again, so much material has come from so many other countries, and maybe in a completely different country, all of these are assembled together and comes out a pencil. So we are all materially advancing, no doubt. There is no doubt that we are materially advancing better than ever before. Even in this time of pandemic, we are able to connect with our family and relatives. Again, because of technology. Yet, even though there is so much technological advancement, we see that for almost no reason, people have this nature to create quarrel. They become upset with someone, and sometimes they're just emotionally drawn and they start quarrel, they start war, they start battles, they start causing havoc on each other, just for very irrelevant reasons. Means if you look at some of the reasons in the past, means in history, then we realize that more than 90% of the wars were fought on the name of religion. And these are all related to upadhis, right? Related to the body, related to, I am greater than you. And these are the real reasons where there is so much upheaval in human society. And we have to rise above. We are not this body, we are the spirit soul. So that we understand in Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna reveals to Arjuna. And Bhagavad Gita is like ABCs of spiritual knowledge. Here we are doing the high school study in Srimad Bhagavatam. And the postgraduate study is Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, yes, Bhagavad Gita talks about who we are. We are, eternal servant of Lord Shri Krishna. Jivera Saruphoya Krishna Nityadas. We are eternal living entities. So we never die, we never take birth. Yet at the same time we have a nature. Our nature is, what is our nature? Our nature is as an eternal servant. Why are we eternal servant of Lord Shri Krishna? Jivera Saruphoya Krishnera Nityadas. Because we are all seeking happiness, Anand Bhayabhyasat. And we are all seeking happiness, and that happiness, the transcendental bliss that we are seeking, when we try to seek in this material world, it is like a drop in the ocean. When, sometimes people become Mayavadis and they're trying to merge into Brahman, that's like a water in a calf's hoof print. And then when we are further rising above to seek eternal happiness in serving the Lordship, right? By following the 9 processes of devotional service with love, with affection, with care, then we realize that he is the master of the senses, Rishikesha. And by serving the master of the senses, all our senses are fully satisfied. And we experience transcendental bliss, which is like an overflowing ocean. It's not a pool, it's not a pond, it's not a lake, it's not a river, it's an overflowing ocean. So that has been further elaborated in Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the commentary by Srila Vyasadeva on the Vedanta philosophy. So there is a pinprick somewhere, and this pinprick, that void that we experience in our heart, even though we are materially advancing, can only be satisfied when we study Srimad Bhagavatam, when we hear the glories of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa and his devotees. And Prahlad Maharaj, he recommends the approach. What is the recommendation of Prahlad Maharaj? Kaumar acharit pragyo dharman bhagavatan iha dulabham manusham janma tad apya dhruvam arthadam. Srimad Bhagavatam, 7th canto, 6th chapter, the very first verse, Prahlad Maharaj is recommending when talking to his schoolmates. He's saying that from the very early age, Kaumar age, which is less than 6 years of age, generally referred to as like 5 years of age, from the very early age, we should engage in worshipping, in serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dharman Bhagavatan iha. So we should engage in devotional service from the early age. And it is very true, because if you are trying to teach a child who is just trying to understand, like 5 years of age, earlier you start, it's better. And many devotees, they, from the girls from Dhan Samskar onward itself, they start to engage in reading and hearing about Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and so many other scriptures, so that the baby in the womb gets to hear this knowledge. So as early as possible we should start. Because as we grow older, we get influenced by the material energy, and we start to associate ourselves and think ourselves as this body and various things related to the bodies. So I and mine. I causes lust, I causes envy, mine causes lust. So when there are different kind of positions people have, and they say, okay, I am a manager in this company, then the envy is that the manager is envious of the senior manager, who's envious of the director, who's envious of the vice president, who's envious of the president or the CEO. So this envy is a constant factor when we think I'm this body. So we should understand that I'm not this body, I'm a living entity, and the presence of living entity causes the consciousness in this body that the body can function. So we have to understand our true identity. And then mine, aham mameti, mameti is mine, that causes lust. Today I have acquired so much, tomorrow I'll acquire more and more. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Kṛṣṇa is revealing this is demonic mindset, and that it will only cause more anxiety, more disturbance. Rather we should rise above to our Brahma Bhuta stage. So we are Brahman in nature, yet at the same time being in contact with Maya, we are falling down to a lower grade. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na shochina kankshati samah sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labhate param. So one who is at the stage of Brahman, he is Prasannatma, he is always happy, he is rejoicing. Na shochati na kankshati, he does not lament in the past of the past events, and he does not aspire for something in the future. So a person in Brahmabhuta state does not live in the past or in the future, rather lives in the present moment. And Samah Sarveshu Bhuteshu, and he is looking at all other living entities with equal vision, not even making distinction between animals and humans and all, and respectfully at the individual positions, honoring them. It doesn't mean that you walk into the cage of lion saying, oh, you are also a living entity, let me embrace you. No. We understand the nature of other living entities. And we also understand the nature that we have, so we want to be, able to progress on our journey. Right? Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Why am I here? Why is there so much misery here? What is the purpose of my existence? How can I attain the goal of life? All these questions need to be answered, so that we have to seek to answer, and that has been reflected in the Shastras as 3 steps. First is Sambandha. Jivera Sarupaya Kṛṣṇa Nityada. So Krishna is the master and we are the servant. And we are eternal servant of Lord Shri Krishna. Second is Abhideya, which is the process, the activities which we engage in. And these activities are the 9 processes of devotion service. In the 11th canto, we will see that Shukdev Goswami adds 2 more, reading and writing. So devotion service. And then Prayojana is the goal of life. What is the goal of life? To attain love of Godhead, to go back home, back to Godhead. Mukta Sangha Paravrajet. So, relieve ourselves from the clutches of Maya and go back home, back to Godhead, to free ourselves from the 3 modes of material nature and to attain the supreme abode and in the service of Lord Shri Krishna. So that is an essential aspect, and that will give us transcendental bliss, which will be like overflowing ocean. Then as we go forward, means again in Preface, Srila Prabhupada is talking about disparity in human society, which is due to the lack of principles in a godless civilization. He's identifying that void. He's saying that Srimad Bhagavatam is the transcendental science. As this study of Srimad Bhagavatam, the transcendental science, reveals to us the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Krishna, and our relationship with Lord Shri Krishna. And just by studying Srimad Bhagavatam, we can attain God realization in this very life. And then Srila Prabhupada takes a very humble position with respect to his translation. He's saying that now this translation is also present in English, and then he refers to one shloka, just as that shows the humility with which he is presenting this transcendental subject matter, and his purpose are his transcendental ecstasies, as we understand. So he's referring to this verse, Tadvad visargo janatag viplavo yasmin pratishlokam abadhavatyapi namanyanantasya yasho ankitani yacha shravanti gayanti grihananti sadhavaha. So he's saying Tadvad visargo janatag viplavo. This subject matter, Srimad Bhagavatam, that transcendental science is meant to cause, this is about the name, form, activities, pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is meant to bring a revolution in the life of the humanity. So in our lives it will bring a revolution. Yasmin prati shlokam abhadhavatavi. And even though every shloka may have a fault. So that is an important aspect. So namani ananta yasho ankitani. So what kind of subject matter it is that will bring revolution in our life? It is about the glories of the name, form, activities, pastimes of Lord Shri Krishna. So that is the subject matter. Shravanti, gayanti, grihanti, sadhvaha. So people who are honest, they will accept it. Shravanti is, they would hear it in a very respectful, humble mood. Gayanti, they will sing it, they will glorify it, they will speak about it to others so as to benefit this humanity. And Grihanti, they will accept it. People who are honest, sadhvaha. So honest men will accept Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, then this is where, these are the 5 important lessons from Preface, and then we'll dive into the introduction of Srimad Bhagavatam, introduction section. So in the introduction, as I mentioned, of Srimad Bhagavatam, so this is the first canto, and Srila Prabhupada translated this first canto before he came to US. So he brought this, and of course Srimad Bhagavatam, as we'll be hearing, is Shukdev Goswami, speaking Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj for 7 days, constantly, and
but it would take us longer than
Yes, it will take us longer than 7 days. Yeah, longer than 7 months. Actually, the previous study took us almost 10 years. We started in 2011 and finished it earlier this year. Yeah, sometime in September, I believe, September, October. So, in the introduction section, I wanted to.
What are you doing?
I'm trying to find a specific Naimisharanya picture, but that's okay. I don't see it here because that aspect will come later on. Hare Kṛṣṇa. And it is very interesting that we also have the original 3 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto that we'll share next class, is where Srila Prabhupada, he had even, received, once again, he had nice picture. And this is, his disciples later on created a, beautiful cover. But he had a very similar cover and a little retro, but it was very sweet, with the lotus flowers and Radha Krishna in the center just like this, but it looks more like lotus. This is a round lotus. That's like Radha Krishna is standing in a lotus, in the whirl of the lotus that is there. So in the introduction of Srimad Bhagavatam, so before we directly dive into the introduction of Srimad Bhagavatam, we'd like to cover that Srimad Bhagavatam is one of the, it is Bhagavad Puran, and there are 18 major Puranas and 18 minor Puranas. And of the 18 major Puranas, the Puranas have been divided into 3 different modes: mode of goodness, mode of passion, mode of ignorance. Padma Puran, Srimad Bhagavatam, they are all in the mode of goodness. And goodness means cleanliness, and cleanliness is next to godliness. So from that perspective, and yet at the same time, this is Amala Purana. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu called Srimad Bhagavatam as faultless Puran. And we also understand that this is the ripened fruit of the Vedic knowledge. So if you think that Vedic knowledge is in the form of a tree where the trunk is Lord Krishna himself, and from that tree the fruits that are coming down, Srimad Bhagavatam is the ripened fruit which has been passed from one branch to another. It's because if a ripened fruit falls on the ground, especially a mango, it will spatter, right? It will break, but it has been passed very nicely from one branch to another. And on top of that, we know that if there is a mango that has been tasted by a parrot, it is very sweet. And Shukadeva Goswami, he is speaking Srimad Bhagavatam. So it becomes even more relishable because it is spoken by Shukadeva Goswami. Shuka means parrot. And Shukadeva Goswami in his previous body was the pet parrot of Radharani. And when Radharani was also returning back home along with Lord Shri Krishna, he wanted to return, but Radharani said, no, you have a purpose, and so you stay and you hear the glories of our sweet pastimes. So Shukadeva Goswami previously was a messenger between Radha and Krishna. If we look from the age perspective, even though Shukadeva Goswami appears as a 16-year-old, he is much more older. He is much more older even with respect to Arjuna and others, Pandavas. So, but he has a body of a 16-year-old, and that we will also cover. It's been elaborately explained in the 9th canto, 10th canto, and 11th canto. You get the glimpse as Shukadeva Goswami is actually a much older personality, but he has a body that does not grow old. Just like the Chatur Kumaras, they stayed with the body of 5-year-old boys, and they did not have any clothes on their body. Similarly, Shukadeva Goswami does not wear any clothes on his body. And he is a fully realized soul. So we'll cover that story sometimes. But today, one of the important aspects is that why is it in the mode of goodness? Somebody can say, why is this Amal Purana? So Puranas specifically cover 10 subject matters, and they identify those subject matters within the text itself. In Srimad Bhagavatam, that has also been identified in the 2nd canto, the 10th chapter, the very first verse. Shri Shuka Uvacha Atra sargo visargascha sthanam poshanamutayah manvantare shanukatha nirodho muktir ashrayah. Atra sarga visargascha. So Shukdev Goswami, Sutta Goswami, Shukdev Goswami is revealing that there are 10 subject matters in Srimad Bhagavatam. What are these 10 subject matters? The primary creation, Atra Sarga, primary creation of this material universe. Visargascha. So that is secondary creation. The primary creation is coming from Mahavishnu. Secondary creation is coming from Lord Brahma. Visargascha. Sthanam. So that is the planetary position of this universe. Poshanam Utaya. So Poshanam is the protection of the Lord, and Utaya is the creative impetus. Why this material world has been created, so that has been elaborated. Then Manvantare. So the different dynasties and appearance of the Manus. And Ishanukatha, and then comes after the 9th canto, comes 10th chapter, where the glories of the appearance of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa himself. 10th canto is like the face of the Lord, right? So that's also there. And then Nirodho, Mukti Ashraya. So what is the solution? Nirodh, and then Mukti is to attain liberation, and Ashraya to attain the supreme destination by going back home, back to Godhead. So these are the 10 subject matters that have been covered in Srimad Bhagavatam. So in the introduction, Srila Prabhupada starts by identifying the difference between God and the Absolute Truth. He is stating that the conception of God and the conception of Absolute Truth are not on the same level. When he says this, it is shocking, right? Because we have general tendency that all religion are based on the acceptance of one God or another. Srila Prabhupada makes that distinction by saying that there are various kinds of gods. God means controller, Ishvara. Ishvara means controller. And so, but at the above all this controller is the Absolute Truth, the Samam Bonam, one who is completely independent and is the cause of all these causes. So there are various gods, various controllers in this material universe we find who are controlling different elements or different entities based on their authority. And such controllers are referred to as Vibhuti Mat Sattva. So they are controller empowered by the Supreme Lord, by the Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. And so they are not independent. They are not samrat, rather they are adheen, they are within the empowered jurisdiction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And so, before starting this commentary, Srila Prabhupada identifies in the introduction that Srila Vyasadeva, the author of Srimad Bhagavatam, he first offers his respectful obeisances unto the Param Satyam, the Absolute Truth. And it is Srimad Bhagavatam that refers to the Absolute Truth, the Samam Bonam, the ultimate aspect. So again, and Lord is Parameshwar. He is the topmost Ishwar. He is the supreme controller. And because of the Param Satyam is the ultimate source of all energies, the Param Satyam is the supreme person. So he is also making a distinction that while there can be controlling aspects, compared to Brahman, Paramatma, and then Bhagwan, it is Bhagwan who is the Absolute Truth. And Srimad Bhagavatam refers to that Bhagwan, Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, in his two arms, Shyam Sundar form. So Parameshwar is the Supreme Ishvara. While under the Parameshwar, Vibhuti Mat Sattva refers to various empowered gods or authorities that are not independent. So this is where he elaborates. Now Srila Prabhupada elaborates this verse in his introduction, in the introduction of Srimad Bhagavatam. Janmadiyasya yato anvayad iktraschateshva bhigya swarat tene brahma hridayadi kavaye Muhyanti yat suryaha tejo vari mridam yatha vinimayotri sargo amrisha dhvamna svena sada nirasta kuhkam satyam param dhimahi. Now this invocation mantra of, the very first mantra followed by, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Here he is making a prayer, yet at the same time this shloka and the second shloka together forms a Gayatri mantra. These are on the meter of a Gayatri mantra. What is the meaning of Gayatri? Gayatri. So various acharyas have given various definitions of Gayatri. So there are various references that are available. If you like, we will share them. One aspect is Gaya refers to singing the glories of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. 3 is the essence of the Vedas. Who is the essence of the Vedas? So Gayatri is a mantra that glorifies the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the essence of the 3 Vedas. That's one example. Second example is Gaya is one who delivers or delivers from. And what does it deliver from? 3. And now 3 has 2 different meanings. It can refer to the 3 modes of material nature. So we are delivered from the clutches on the ropes. Guna also means ropes. The 3 modes of material nature, the mode of goodness, passion and ignorance. So that's one aspect. So when we are delivered from the 3 modes of material nature, we attain the absolute truth. So we attain the absolute destination. We get the love of Godhead. So we have attained the goal. So that has been identified as 1. 3 also refers to the 3 Adidevik is because of natural disturbances like tsunami, pandemic and so forth. And Adhyatmic is the one that's created by one's own mind. Of the 3, it is the Adhyatmic, the miseries we create by our own thinking or by our own mind is what we should watch for. We cannot control the other 2 because they are coming from external source. However, this is coming from ourselves. So here, in the introduction, Srila Prabhupada is actually, he did not put the verse as such, but he is giving, the translation of that first verse, in the introduction of Srimad Bhagavatam, where he's saying, Janmadiyasya yathon vayad. So he's saying that my dear Vyasadeva is praying to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, that you are the cause of creation, maintenance and annihilation. It is the first creation, as we'll hear in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, is coming from Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, when he expands into Balaram, and from Balaram comes, Vasudeva, Sankarshan, Pradyumna and Aniruddha, the Chaturvyuha form, and from them comes Mahavishnu, the Karnodakshai Vishnu, who is in the causal ocean, and from him, his body and his breathing emanate so many material universes, and our universe is a small universe, and in this universe, further Mahavishnu expands as Garbhodakshai Vishnu in the Garbhodak ocean. He is lying on Anantashesh, where from, so again from Garbhodak ocean onward it starts. So there is the lotus comes, and from his navel, and on this lotus, Lord Brahma is born. So Lord Kṛṣṇa is Swarat. So he is completely aware of all the activities that is going on, because he is the original cause. While we do not have that awareness. We eat food, Srila Prabhupada is giving this example, but we do not know how that food is digested. But Lord Kṛṣṇa, he knows exactly how it is digested, how everything is going on in this material world. And he is, Abhigya means he is completely aware, he is completely conscious of every single detail. And he is Swarat, he is completely independent. While we know that we are limited, we are dependent. So we are not completely independent. So when the freedom movement was going on, Swarajya. So again, Swaraj means independence. But Swarat means one who is independent. Yet we are independent in that we have minute independence. We are not completely independent. living entities have minute independence. And why is this independence there? Because Lord, we are, He is our Parampita, right? Aham Bija Parampita. Lord Krishna says that I am the father, I'm the seed-giving father in this material universe, in the universe, spiritual and material universe. So He is the Supreme Father and we are His sons and daughters. So we have this relationship, yet at the same time He is unlimited and we are limited. He is like the ocean, we are the drop of the ocean. He is like a grand fire and we are spark from the fire. So that's how we should understand. Means when Srila Prabhupada gave the analogy of the presiding deity on the sun globe, and then the sun rays. Sun rays represent Brahman, sun globe represents Paramatma, and the presiding deity Svatur, which is Vivaswan, represents the presiding deity of sun. So that is like giving an analogy that there is a supreme person behind everything. So Lord Krishna is the supreme person, and He further expands as Paramatma and then into Brahman, and then so many other expansions of Vishnu Tattvas happen, which are Swamshas. And we living entities are Vibhinnamshas. So we are different category. And then of course there are Shaktis, right? The three kinds of Shaktis. Internal potency, Radharani, and related potencies. Then Bahir Shakti is external potency, Vaishno Devi or Ma Durga. Vaishno means devotee of Lord Vishnu, by the way. And then we, the living entities, we are Tatashta, we are the marginal energies. And there are many unique other, Amshas are there, just like Jiva Tattva. So non-different from Krishna, but it is different because of the contact with Maya. He is the consort, means his consort is Durga Devi, Parvati Devi. So very difficult to understand. Jiva Tattva is a different topic. So we are staying on this particular aspect where Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, Pranava Sarva Vedeshu. So the word Omkar, which is the cause of the existence and creation of this material universe, Om, A-U-M. A represents Krishna, U represents Radharani, and M represents the living entity. So that's another description given in the Shastras. So is the representation of Lord Shri Krishna. And then Srila Vyasadeva is saying, Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, pay obeisances to Vasudevaya, Lord Vasudev. Lord Vasudev, Vasudev has two meanings. The first meaning is son of Vasudev. Vasudeva and Devaki, they had 8th son who is none other than Lord Shri Krishna. And he is called by the name Vasudeva, which means son of Vasudeva. There is second meaning of Vasudeva, one who has Vas everywhere, one who is eternally present, one who is omnipresent. And Lord expands in the form of Brahman and Paramatma. So that's also, Paramatma is also referred to as Vasudeva, one who is present everywhere. So Lord Krishna is present everywhere. Aham sarvasya prabhavo, matta sarvam pravartate. Everything is in Him. Yet He is present everywhere. So He is first, paying obeisances to Lord Vasudeva. And then He is saying, one who is the cause of creation, maintenance and annihilation, who is completely aware of all the activities, which is Abhigya, and then who is completely independent. Tene Brahma Hidayadi Kavaye. So then he is identifying that you are the one who imparted that Vedic knowledge in the heart of Lord Brahma. So from the heart of Lord Brahma received from his heart the Vedic knowledge. So it was not that suddenly he got up and then he was fully conscious. Well, when on the lotus flower, Lord Brahma, when he took birth, he was surprised. Why am I here? What am I doing here? Who am I? What's the cause of my existence? And then he heard, actually he manipulated, he tried to climb down the stem of that lotus flower. He saw Lord Vishnu, he was very afraid. But even before that, so he was having all these inquiries. Atato Brahma Jigyasa, that came. The very, beginning of Vedanta, where it is like we should inquire, who are we, why are we here? He had those inquiries. And he heard the word tapa. and he understood it means to meditate on. So he went into meditation, and after many thousands of years of meditation, he finally had Sakshatkar of Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, where Lord Kṛṣṇa imparted the Vedic knowledge through the heart of Lord Brahma. And it is also the flute that played, that Brahma Gayatri came, and so many other aspects are there. Those are other aspects. But here it is said, Tenem Brahma Hridaya Adi Kavaye. So you imparted knowledge to Lord Brahma through Lord Brahma's heart. So from there he repeated, Muhyanti ya Surya, and because of you, Surya, great rishis and the demigods, they are constantly put into delusion. Tejo vadi mridam yatha. So this delusion is just like seeing water in the fire or seeing land in the water. So again, these are illusions that we sometimes see reflections. Vinayamayo yatra ti sargu amrisha. So and these are all caused by the three modes of material nature. And even though they appear factual, they are actually not factual. They are temporary in nature, they are just delusion. And why this aspect has been identified? Because there is a tendency when we have received this body to think all sense objects to be means to satisfy our senses. Rather, they are meant to satisfy the Supreme Lord, and even us, we are meant to please the Supreme Lord. But we don't think in that manner, we rather seek to satisfy our senses, and that is delusion. That is Muhyanti, that is the delusion we get placed in, thinking that all the sense objects that we are interacting with are meant for our sense enjoyment. That is the very root cause of misery, that is the very root cause of anxiety, that is the very root cause of unhappiness, when we think that everything around us is meant for our enjoyment. Rather, everything needs to be dovetailed in pleasing Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, and when we please Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, then we actually experience true bliss. We experience transcendental bliss, happiness. Dhamna svena sada nirasta kuhukam. Then he is saying that he is eternally existence. Lord Kṛṣṇa is eternally existence in his spiritual abode, which is forever free from the illusory representation of the material world. So he is in Vaikuntha, he is in Golok Vrindavan, and Lord Kṛṣṇa is in Golok Vrindavan, the topmost spiritual planet, and that spiritual universe, those universes are all free from all effects that we see in the material world. The three modes of material nature, the delusion that is there. So every living being in the spiritual universe is enlightened, self-realized living entity. And then he's finishing it with Satyam Param Dhimahi. I meditate upon him because he is the absolute truth. So Srimad Bhagavatam deals with absolute truth, the Samam Bonam, not with the various gods, and identifies that Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, he is the absolute truth, Sarva Karana Karanam, he is the cause of all causes. So this is where Srila Prabhupada is elaborating and establishing the authority of Srimad Bhagavatam. After having established the authority of Srimad Bhagavatam, he further goes on to elaborate as how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he propagated by his very life. He showed, how to live the life of Srimad Bhagavatam. So he is identifying that, Srila Prabhupada is saying that one should receive Srimad Bhagavatam from a person who is Bhagavatam. And we received this Srimad Bhagavatam from Shri Kṛṣṇa Dvaipara Vyasadeva, and further it was propagated by none other than Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa Chaitanya himself, who is none other than Radha Kṛṣṇa. And then it is coming in disciplic succession with the commentaries, the purpose coming from the Acharyas in disciplic succession, who are making it relevant for us to understand, so that we can understand this highly elevated matter. And in this subject matter, the transcendental science, which is presented to us by Srila Prabhupada, as Srimad Bhagavatam in English, is basically meant to cause revolution in our lives so that we can all attain God realization. And Srila Prabhupada placed a very simple goal as the motto for, as the goal of, you basically set a goal that how an organization will be considered successful. And he said that if it's present just one devotee, one pure devotee, then that would be the criteria that we have attained success. And we should understand that that devotee is you. So again, each of us have an opportunity to make it a successful organization just by taking the teachings. And yes, we also understand, just like in the shloka earlier we covered, Tadvad visargo janatagha viplavo yasmin prati shlokam apadhavatyapi namani anantasya yasho ankitani yashravanti gayanti grahanti sadhuha. So the subject matter means when we are taking it, we may make many mistakes, yes. Yet that is not the criteria. The criteria of success is how much effort each of us is making. And it should be a sincere effort to please the spiritual master. It should be a sincere effort to please the, acharyas. It should be a sincere effort to please Lord Shri Chaitanya. It should be a sincere effort to please Shri Radha Kṛṣṇa. And that is the criteria of success. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by his own example, that how we are carrying out our activities, should be an effort to please Srila Prabhupada, who is providing us all this knowledge. This is his translation of ecstasy that he wrote by waking up early at night, means 2:30 a.m. onward he will start doing the translation of Srimad Bhagavatam. So this is meant for us to take to our heart, to follow the instructions, to read and experience the transcendental bliss by practicing this, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu by his own example shows. And when he was on his parikrama, the 6th-year pilgrimage to the south and all the way to Vrindavan, he met one Brahman, where this Brahman was reciting Bhagavad Gita daily, and he was crying constantly. So we have to understand from that perspective that this Brahman was not very literate. He was not able to pronounce the shlokas properly. And so there were other great scholarly Brahmins in that area, and they were all laughing at him. What is he doing? When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu saw this Brahman, he said, "Why are you doing this? Why are you crying?" So this Brahman reflected that actually my Guru Maharaj, my spiritual master, gave me one instruction only, that I should read Bhagavad Gita. So I come here and I read Bhagavad Gita every day. But I'm not very literate, so I make a lot of mistakes. But Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, "But why are you crying?" So he reveals that I'm crying because I'm seeing Lord Kṛṣṇa. He has taken the position of Partha Sarthi. He has become the charioteer of Arjuna. He has taken a lower position for, in front of his devotee. And seeing this compassionate way Lord is dealing with Arjuna is, makes the tears come out of my eyes. And it's sometimes when we devotees hear this pastime, we just look at it, okay, so Lord accepted to be Partha Sarthi. But what does it mean to be a Sarthi, a charioteer of a person? That is very important to understand, because that Brahman understood it. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he immediately embraced that Brahman. He said, "Yes, you have understood the essence of Bhagavad Gita." Well, what does it mean to be a charioteer? A charioteer on the battlefield, when he is taking the warrior, it is not possible for the warrior to give the direction, turn left or turn right, because there are so many clanking of metals and weapons. They are bombarding all over the place. It is very difficult to hear anything. If you have been on a battlefield, you would know that it's very difficult to hear among all these bombardments and shootings and all the cries, and people are shouting because they have been hit. The various body parts have been hit by the weapons and by the arms and so forth. So it is very difficult for the warrior to tell whether to turn left or right. So the warrior has to rest his left foot on the back of the charioteer, and when the warrior pushes the left side, then the charioteer knows that he has to go left. When the warrior pushes onto the right side, then the charioteer knows. But then you cannot always just keep your foot on the back. So the warrior is actually kicking the charioteer to go left or to go right, because that's the only way the communication could happen on a battlefield. And Lord Krishna is accepting that position, to be constantly being, kicked and pressed by the feet of Arjun on the battlefield, and yet carrying out the order. He's Achyuta, he never falls down. He's still in that position, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yet he takes that lowly position because of the love and affection of his devotee, because of that sweet relationship he has. That's why in Kartik month we glorify Lord Krishna as Damodar, because he has agreed to be bound by the love of Yashoda Mai. He has taken that low position to be her son, to completely be dependent on her for his very existence, as if. And Yashoda Mai really feels that this is my Lalla. If I don't feed Krishna, he will die of hunger. If I don't take care of him, he would not look nice. If I don't protect him from all kind of calamities, if I don't chant the mantras, if I don't call the brahmanas, if I don't bathe him with the cow urine, if I don't do this, if I don't do that, she's constantly in anxiety, thinking how to serve Krishna, how to love Krishna, how to take care of Krishna. Now that is the mode, the tending, loving care of a mother. That's why Mamta, this aspect comes from ladies. And if we pay attention to our Puranas and our Vedanta philosophy, we realize that women have an exalted position in all our Shastras. And if you look at it, who are glorified in Vrindavan? If you go to Vrindavan, whose name do you hear most? Radhe, Radhe. You meet any Vrindavan Vasi, they will always be chanting Radhe, Radhe. Is Radha Rani name of Krishna? No. She is the pleasure-giving potency of Lord Shri Krishna. Yes, she, when everyone is chanting, because if you satisfy Radharani, then Krishna is automatically satisfied. If mother is happy and puts your case in front of father, father has to accept it. And she is the pleasure-giving potency. She is also referred to as Madan Mohan Mohini. So Lord Krishna is Madan Mohan. He can enchant the Cupid. But Radharani is Madan Mohan Mohini. She can enchant Madan Mohan, Lord Shri Krishna himself. And she is also personified bhakti, right? Devotion service. So this devotion service is also referred to as Shri Krishna Akarshini, one who can attract Lord Shri Krishna. So here, Srila Prabhupada identifies that it is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He appeared in 1407 AD as per the Christian calendar in February. And that's when he appeared, and from the very early time itself, he showed his supreme position. And when he would cry, as soon as people started chanting the holy name, he would stop crying. So from the very beginning, he was engaging everyone around him in the chanting of the holy name. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. When he appeared, it was at the time of lunar eclipse, where all the inhabitants of Navadvip were entering, bathing in Ganges and chanting out the holy name. Hare Kṛṣṇa, Hare Kṛṣṇa, Kṛṣṇa Kṛṣṇa, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Anytime he would start crying, the ladies knew that they have to chant the holy name, and he would stop crying. Once there was a Brahman visiting. So this Brahman, when he made an offering to the deities, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his baby form, he came there and he took part of that bhoga, And so he said, oh, this is spoiled. The Brahman did not understand that this is none other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's making an offering and the Lord himself is coming. But he thought that it is spoiled, so he threw it away. And then he prepared again. Again Lord appeared, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he took that. So his name at the time of birth was Vishwambhar, one who carries the whole world, right? All the universes. Vishwa refers to universe. And so Lord, he was partaking, making it successful for the Brahman, but because of illusion, Mohiyanti Yat Surya, even the great sages and demigods are illusion. This is just a Brahman. He was also illusion. He was thinking that his offering has been spoiled. And when he complained to Mother Shachi Devi, she put Lordship to sleep. And at that time when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he was sleeping, the Brahman also made an offering, and at midnight when he was making the offering, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came again and he partook the, he tasted that offering. So this time the Brahman, he was crying, but nobody could hear him. And at that time, to give mercy to this Brahman, Lord manifested his original form of Shyam Sundar. And so the Brahman was feeling blessed, and he was told that not to reveal this. Yet at the same time, Lord revealed it to his associates, and that's why we know of this pastime. There were many such wonderful pastimes where once Lord, he was in the courtyard and suddenly a snake appeared. And Lord was playing with the snake and everyone was shocked and afraid. And when the snake retreated, Shachi Mata, she immediately picked him up and, thinking that yes, as a mother she has to protect. Just like Yashoda Mai, she's constantly thinking of how to protect, how to, keep safe Kṛṣṇa, how to feed Kṛṣṇa, how to make sure that Kṛṣṇa is nicely taken care of, how to take care of her baby. So this is the mood Shachi Mata was also, taking care of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And his nickname was Nimai. Why? Because he was born under a neem tree. So again, all this introduction in Srimad Bhagavatam introduction, Srila Prabhupada is giving a summary of the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So that has been also being given in Srimad Bhagavatam. And I would request you to please go and take some time to read the introduction, where you get the glimpse of the life of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, as how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he started the Sankirtan movement. And when the Kaji, of Navadvip, so Navadvip at that time was ruled by Pathan. And so the Kaji, he was provoked by the Brahmanas, the regular Brahmanas in Navadvip, that this chanting of the holy name is not right. He tried to, forbid that. And the constables came and Shiva's Angan, they came and they broke some mridanga. And at that time, as soon as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to know, he came out with this big congregation of doing kirtan and going to the house of Kaji, Nawab Hussain Shah, that was his name. And he called out, but Nawab Hussain Shah, he immediately, ran to the top floor of his house. He was, afraid that such a huge crowd has gathered and they would attack him, because they had, the fire sticks, mashal in their hands, and they were doing big kirtan. Tumultuous sound was coming. And at that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked the crowd to become calm, to pacify. So this was the first civil disobedience movement that was started by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Kṛṣṇa himself. There is a wonderful pastime as how Lordship, when he was just 16 years of age, he started his own Vidyapit, so his own school. And when there was Keshav Kashmiri, a great scholar, going around the country, trying to defeat and getting great name by defeating other scholars, he was coming to Navadvip. At that time, the scholars and Brahmanas of Navadvip, they decided that they would ask Nimai to, Keshav Kashmiri to have, his scholarly competition with Nimai Pandit. And if he is defeated by Nimai Pandit, then they will say, well, even a small boy, a young boy of Navadvip can defeat Keshav Kashmiri. So what's the great thing? And if he defeats Nimai Pandit, then they will say, he just defeated a small boy, a young boy of Navadvip. So in both ways, they would have the glories. And before even that, competition could occur, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nimai Pandit, he met Keshav Kashmiri while walking on a seashore. And out there, he just inquired, while conversing with Keshav Kashmiri, to sing some verses in the glories of Ganges river, at the bank of Ganges at Navadvip as they were strolling. And Keshav Kashmiri immediately, recited 100 verses. And at that time, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said that, well, there is a flaw in your verses. And he recited back the 100 verses and said in the 64th verse, when you are talking about Bhavani Bhrata, there is a mistake, a grammatical mistake, because Bhavani means wife of Lord Shiva. Bhrata, why do you have to call her who is the husband? Because we know who the husband is from the very name, Bhavani, Bhrata. So Bhavani has the husband's name in it. So, and Keshav Kashmiri was shocked that he had composed those 100 verses, and Nimai Pandit Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he immediately memorized them, and now one by one he was finding faults in all those, so he immediately surrendered. And then Goddess Saraswati came in his dream and told him that this is her worshipable Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa, in the form of Nimai Pandit. So he immediately surrendered to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, for 24 years, he lived in Navdvip, and then afterwards he took sannyas, and for another 24 years in sannyas order he lived, showing us how to live as a sannyasi, how to be a renunciate. And after that, he finished his leelas and returned back home. So 48 years was the lifespan where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu reveals from his very life how to live the life of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he propagated, the teachings of Srimad Bhagavatam and spread. He is also said to be the father of the congregational chanting. Srila Prabhupada calls him father of congregational chanting in the introduction. So, beautiful introduction, and here the very first verse has been also stressed by Srila Prabhupada. Before even starting Srimad Bhagavatam, he is identifying as how Srila Vyasadeva is praying to that Supreme Lord who is the absolute truth. He is Paramatma, he is the Parameshwar. So beyond all Ishvara is Parameshwar, beyond all Brahman is Parabrahman, and that is none other than Lord Shri Kṛṣṇa. So that has been established. In the next class, we will be covering the very first chapter. So in each class, we will be covering a whole chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, focusing on specific lessons. Hare Krishna. Thank you for joining us today. Gantra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nand Kori Vaishnavind ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.